During a stormy night in a small rural town in Maine, a house is damaged by a falling tree. The next morning, an illustrator, David, surveys the aftermath of the storm, which had caused an old tree to crash through his window. His son Billy calls David and his wife to check on their lake house, which had also been destroyed. The family notices a thick mist descending from the mountain, which David finds peculiar. David decides to visit his neighbor Norton to discuss the fallen tree. Cautiously approaching due to past disagreements, David finds Norton struggling to start his chainsaw. After informing Norton about the fallen tree and noticing that his car is also damaged, Norton asks David to drive into town to buy repair materials. Hoping to mend their strained relationship, David agrees. They drive to town, encountering repair vehicles from an army convoy along the way. Norton identifies the soldiers as being from a nearby military base involved in the mysterious Arrowhead project. When Norton asks David if he knows anything about the project, David mentions rumors ranging from crashed alien ships to supernatural creatures. At a store, David chats with the employees, Sally and Weeks, while Norton thanks him for his assistance. Billy asks if he and Norton have reconciled, but David says it's too early to tell. Suddenly, police and fire sirens blare through the town, followed by a military police officer instructing the soldiers to cancel their vacations and return to base immediately. The store freezes as the military base sirens start blaring. At that moment, a man with a bleeding nose rushes in, shouting that creatures in the mist had taken one of his friends. Despite Weeks' attempts to calm him, the man panics and urges them to close the store doors. A shopper bolts toward his car, but the mist engulfs him and only his screams are heard. The store stares out the window in silence, unable to see anything beyond as mysterious tremors shake the building. Later, David encounters Mrs. Irene, who introduces him to Amanda, a woman caring for Billy. Weeks informs David that he can find blankets in the loading dock. As David heads there, he notices the store's generator malfunctioning and hears a noise from the back door. Frightened, he retreats to the store and urges Weeks and others to check the generator. Jim, one of the men, hands out flashlights and they discover something blocking the generator's exit. David objects to clearing it, warning they don't know what's in the mist, but Jim and Norm insist, feeling insulted by David's caution. As the rolling doors open, thick mist rolls in and a massive tentacle suddenly emerges, grabbing Norm. David tries to help, but the other men are frozen with fear. Weeks rushes to retrieve an axe, but more tentacles appear, tearing into Norm. Despite their efforts, Norm is pulled into the mist, screaming as Weeks shuts the doors. Enraged, David blames Jim for Norm's death, but Weeks intervenes to stop the fight. The group regathers and decides to inform the others in the store. David tries to convince Norton, but he is skeptical and defensive, suspecting the group might attack him due to his intention to sue David. The commotion draws the attention of the others in the store. To prove their story, David takes the manager and another man to the loading dock, where they find blood stains and the severed tentacle, which soon evaporates. The group returns to confirm the story, but Norton remains unconvinced, believing it to be a trick. Mrs. Caird then starts proclaiming that the events are foretold in the Bible and that the mist demands a blood sacrifice. Tensions rise as Norton and a small group decide to leave through the mist, believing there is no real danger. David suggests tying a rope around a volunteer to retrieve a shotgun from a car. A motorcyclist volunteers, but when they pull the rope back, only the lower half of the motorcyclist remains. Mayan and Jim work on adjusting the lights and connecting them to batteries, ensuring the store remains illuminated in case of an emergency. Soon after, a massive flying creature appears at the store's window, attracting more creatures. Realizing the lights are drawing them in, Jim and Mayan rush to turn off the lights, but it worsens the situation. The window shatters and the creatures invade the store. David quickly lights a torch to fend off the bizarre creatures. Chaos ensues as more creatures flood in, leading to injuries and fatalities. Using the flames to their advantage, David and the others manage to kill several creatures. With Weeks' help, David saves his son, and Weeks kills one of the creatures. The group eventually seals the hole in the window, calming the situation slightly. Someone remarks that Mrs. Caird's ominous prediction came true. David leaves his son with Amanda and checks on others with Weeks. Meanwhile, Amanda notices a woman who has taken all her sleeping pills in an attempt to forget the horrors. David meets with survivors to discuss the possibility of leaving, expressing concerns that staying is unsafe. He suggests going to the pharmacy next door to gather supplies and then escaping as far as possible. Some agree, but Amanda worries the mist extends farther than anticipated. David acknowledges her concern, but is troubled by Mrs. Caird's growing influence as she preaches that the mist demands sacrifices. The group fears others may start believing her. Amanda reassures them that everyone is civilized, but David warns that fear can drive people to desperation. Billy, anxious about losing his father, begins to cry, but David promises to return. Caird blocks their path, warning that going to the pharmacy will provoke the creatures. Soldier Wayne Jessup joins the group, leaving his fellow soldiers behind. They venture into the mist and reach the pharmacy where they gather supplies. However, they soon notice spiderwebs on the ceiling and find people wrapped in them. One of the trapped individuals, the military police officer, apologizes, saying it was his fault before convulsing violently as spiders emerge from his face. Shortly after, Jim encounters a giant spider. Weeks fires a shot, but more spiders appear, launching acid webs. The military officer collapses, releasing hundreds of spiders. The group is attacked but manages to fight their way out. Though some members are left behind, those who survive return to the supermarket terrified. David rushes to Billy and holds him tightly. The next day, David finds Caird preaching to a large group of survivors. Weeks comments that Caird has become extremely convincing, with the group now treating her as a prophet. Despite this, David's group remains determined to leave. They confront Wayne, who lies about knowing anything, but they notice the other soldiers are missing. They find the soldiers who have taken their own lives. Wayne explains that they likely did this after learning the truth. Jim then drags Wayne to the crowd, declaring the mist is the military's fault due to a secret project. Caird seizes the moment, branding Wayne a blasphemer. The crowd turns violent, stabbing Wayne and dragging him outside where a massive crab-like creature takes him. David comforts Billy, promising to protect him from the monsters. The next day, as the group prepares to leave, they find Caird waiting at the door, denouncing them as blasphemers. She declares that David's group must be sacrificed to the mist, ordering her followers to take Billy as the first offering. David's group is surrounded and desperately fights back. Suddenly, Weeks appears and shoots Caird, ending her life. Her followers retreat, allowing David's group to escape. They rush through the mist toward David's car. Weeks reaches the car first, but is taken by a giant crab-like creature. One by one, the rest of the group is attacked by giant spiders and separated. Eventually, David, Billy, Irene, and Dan reach the car. David spots Weeks' gun, grabs it, and starts the car. They drive past the store, with the remaining survivors watching them leave. Arriving at David's house, he finds his wife encased in a spiderweb cocoon. Overcome with grief, he weeps, but decides to keep driving to ensure Billy's safety. As they continue their journey, they witness scenes of death and destruction. A colossal beast crosses their path, shaking the car with each step. They drive until they run out of fuel. Feeling hopeless, David realizes there are only 4 bullets left. Believing they won't survive, he decides to use the bullets on the 4 passengers, firing several shots inside the car. Moments later, David screams in agony for killing the others. He attempts to take his own life but discovers there are no bullets left. Frustrated, he exits the car and pounds on the vehicle, wishing for the creatures to end his life. As he prepares to die, an armored tank appears, and the mist begins to lift, revealing a military convoy with survivors and heavily armed soldiers. David collapses in despair, realizing that if he had waited a few more minutes, everyone could have been saved. This is Flashback Recap. Click like and see you later.